Okay, I'm going to break this moody landscape down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine so that you can have a go, create this, and image yourself. Okay, so the app that I'm using for this tutorial is Procreate, but I don't see any reason why you can't still follow along using a different app on a different tablet. Having said that, within the app, Procreate, I'm using the default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. I'm also using one of their default color profiles, the sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1 on the list here. In terms of the brushes, I'm only going to be using the default brushes that come free with the app, so you don't need to download anything. I'll let you know which brush to use at which point during the tutorial. And then I've selected a range of colors suitable for this image. If you go to the value section here, each of the colors has a hexadecimal code, and all the codes are down in the video description, so you can piece this together for yourself. Or an easier alternative, next to the codes in the description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the color file for free. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. A big thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It makes a massive difference. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to support in a different way, then simply leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel, they make a massive difference too. So thank you for that as well. And with all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do on our canvas is go to the first color on the top row. I'm going to drag into the canvas and it flood fills. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 2, and I'm going to go to the second color on the top row. I'm going to go to the Elements Clouds brush. I'm going to put the size at 20% and 100% opacity. And then we're going to build it in from quite high up on the sides. And you can do it in just big blobs and circles. We can build it down. We can do a band of this going straight across the middle. Doesn't really matter. We're going to cover up this bottom section, but just in terms of visualizing it, sometimes it's useful. And then maybe just turn it down a little bit, maybe 15%. And then from here, we're going to start doing some blobs, and we're creating irregular kind of series of cloud shapes that kind of undulate, stick out in various places. We want to have the sun quite low in the sky here, so almost towards the center point around here, both in terms of left to right and coming down towards the center as well, but not quite. So we want a series of lumps and shapes initially of cloud. Maybe turn it down again, 10% or 9% that was. We can extend some of these further up. We're going to soften them in a moment anyway. We're just getting a general kind of sense of placement. Doesn't mean that we're absolutely bound to them. Just fill in that top corner. Okay, and just as I said, we're going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to slide that across, not too far, maybe about 7%, and deselect. I'm going to create a new layer, tap on the new layer and put on a clipping mask, which links it to that layer 2. I'm going to go to the third color on the top row. We'll stay with the same brush, the clouds brush, maybe 10% size, but we're going to go lower. We're going to go to about 20% strength, opacity. And I'm just going to circle this in a little bit into these clouds, just in this kind of center area. We don't need to do much of it. I don't want to overdo it. And it is pressure sensitive too, so I'm pressing quite lightly. I just want a kind of grazing of the surface, just a hint of it really, just to help ramp up that glow. Adjustments, Gaussian blur, and slide that across to about 10%. Deselect. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 4. I'm going to tap on the little N, which stands for normal on the blend modes, and we're going to put it to the add, and it changes to an A. I'm going to go to the white color, which is the 6th color on the top row, and I'm going to change brush. I'm going to go to the airbrushing. Well, we'll go for the medium hard brush, and we can tell on the visualizer, on the slider, how big that circle is going to be. We don't want it to be massive, maybe about 7%. In fact, even that's a little bit big, maybe 6% and 100% opacity. And we're going for pretty much the center in terms of left to right, and then not quite at the center, a little bit up from there. Just do a few taps, make it nice and solid. Then we can go to the adjustments, bloom, and slide it across 100%, and it's giving it a glow straight away. Deselect. I'm going to create a new layer. Do the same again, tap on the N, put the add blender mode on, and this time we're going to go back to the colors here, go for the yellow, the fifth colour. We're going to change to a different airbrush. We'll go to the soft brush with an airbrushing, and we'll put it maybe at 15% size. We don't want it very high. Might have to tap it a few times, but about 20%. And just tap on the circle, tap on the sun, build in a glow. Do like 3 taps there, put it up, maybe 30%, 2 taps, and we're building in a really intense glow. I'm going to go for the fourth colour, maybe put it up to 40% size, 1, 2, put it up to 60% size, 1 tap. I think that's really helped. I do feel that now I'm looking at it, layer 4, we can go to transform, and I'm just going to pinch it in, make sure it's on uniform so it doesn't distort it. Pinch it in from a corner. I want it to be just a hint smaller, make sure it's in the center. I think it works better if it's a little bit smaller actually. Sometimes you can't judge that until you start to add the other elements. So that's really started to get some of the glow into the scene, but we're going to work on it a bit more. So I'm going to go back to layer 5. I'm going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and I'm going to continue with the orange color, the fourth color. I want to control it a lot more, so low on the 2% size and even lower on the opacity, maybe about 10%. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And then we have some edges to clouds. Naturally enough, the sun appears close to the edge of those clouds. It isn't in reality because the sun is a long, long way away, obviously. But in terms of proximity, as we look at it here, the sun is close to that bit of cloud. Therefore, that bit of cloud needs to show the effects of the sun illuminating it. So we can just, and honestly, 10% is even perhaps a little bit intense. So maybe put it down to 5%, especially if you struggle to be really light-handed. If you find that you just tend to overdo things a little bit, then yeah, put it down to 5%. You can still definitely see its impact very noticeably. Go around some of these edges. And then maybe there's just some bits of cloud where we haven't got the dark color, but we can still see the effects of the light hitting it. Zoom out, check. And it's quite a simple process, but it quite quickly starts to build in that cloud glow. Now, please be aware that the colors may look a little bit different on your screen compared to what you're watching me do. Different screens can be calibrated just slightly differently, and also my camera is likely to throw off the colors a little bit, but don't overly worry about it. I'll show you my finished version at the very end of the video, and you can compare yours to the screen capture or the still image. But as long as you've downloaded the color or you've used the codes, you will be using the correct colors. Just go over to some of the edges as it goes off onto the peripheral, but not a lot, honestly. We can have a few areas that are just wispier, catch the light. Maybe put it up a little bit more, 3%, and put it even lower. Hard to imagine that 3% would show up, but because we're using the add blend mode, actually it is still quite potent. And then we could just go in and maybe soften up some of those edges. We don't want them necessarily to be completely crisp. And if you're going to be heavy-handed with it anywhere, be heavy-handed on the inside of that area rather than on the cloud. So slightly preference adding more of this to the kind of the sky that's in the background revealed through the gaps in the cloud. In fact, a few sweeps of that in that background area is working really nicely. Perhaps take that up a little bit more. I quite like that overall effect. I'm going to bring some of this a little bit further down, just a bit more texture, a few little anomalies. Now looking at layer 5 and the overall impact of it, I feel that I'd like it to be a little bit warmer. I'm leaving this in the tutorial rather than changing the color palette. I'm going to go to the adjustments, the hue, saturation and brightness, and I'm just showing this because it's really useful to see how you can change the color scheme within the settings without actually having the colors in the color palette. So I'm changing it from 50% on hue. I'm just nudging it. I don't want to go too far because it will go into the reds and the pinks and the purples. But from 50, which when I now put it back looks way too yellow, I've got to about 48, and it's made it warmer, and I think I prefer that overall look. Back in with the soft brush, maybe 5% size, 3% opacity, and I'm just going to do a bit more of this glow, and I'll do it with the orange, it's fine. We've nudged it more towards the warm colours, so I don't mind using the orange still. A bit more of this in the lower area. I don't want to push it too high up really in the scene. I'm going to add more glow. I'm happy for it to be lower down. Let's put it up a little bit, 8%, just in this low area. And now it's important we have quite a lot of glow here because we're going to add some distant mountains now, hills, land features that I want to be able to contrast. Okay, so once we've got an extra bit of glow there, we can test whether we've got enough. We'll go to the layers and create a new layer. Go in with the medium brush with an airbrushing, and we'll go along to the 7th color on the top row, 2% size, maybe 50% strength. And if you add it and it looks too light by contrast to the glow, then you need to add a bit more glow. So I'll leave that there. I'll go back to layer 5, back to the orange, back to soft brush, same settings as we had, and just adding a bit more glow makes this stand out as being a little bit darker. So that is going to be the measure of whether you've got enough glow on the layer 5 in this area, because we want this color to stand out as being tonally just a little bit darker. Doesn't need to be a lot, but as long as it's a little bit darker, then it's the right amount of glow. So once we've cleared that layer, I'm going to go in. Actually, I'm going to change to the medium hard brush, have a slightly crisper edge to it. We are going in with the 7th color, 2% size, 100% opacity, which is going to be too much, but we have ways of kind of pushing that backwards and create a kind of distant mountain range. And we're not going to see much of this. We're going to obscure it at either side. You can see how this then becomes lighter in this section because we didn't add the glow and we don't need it there. The only place we really need this to appear darker than the background is just the center area. Doesn't matter about the rest, we can just fill that in. It's going to be obscured. And well, we can go in with the eraser, put the eraser to the soft brush within airbrushing. 3% size, maybe 30% strength. And we can just knock this back in places, create a softening of that impression. It is impacted by the glow, just creating sweeps of different kind of areas back there. I'm going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 7, and I'm going to go to the 8th color on the top row, medium hard brush, 3% size, 100% opacity, and we're going to create perhaps a slightly lower lying set of shapes. Again, it's just this center area that we're really interested in. So just worry about this bit. Doesn't matter at the edges. Again, with the eraser, same settings, 3% size, 30% strength, and we're on the soft brush. We can just slightly subdue the top edge so it becomes a bit more distance, like that. And we can go in and fine tune that later if we feel we need to. Go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 8. We'll go for the 9th color, and we're going with the medium hard brush, 3% size, 100% opacity. Let's just zoom out so we can see it. And we're going for the center now, down here, and we're going to create some bits of land that jut up more noticeably. And again, go off, and it will appear lighter compared to this, but again, we're going to obscure it, so don't worry about the edges. We just kind of want this center area. And then we can always just increase the size and fill some of this in. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, layer 9. I'm going to use the 10th color on the top row. Go in with the medium hard brush with an airbrushing, 3% size, maybe about 80% strength. Zoom in, and we're going to have a section that almost covers over the layer just before it. We're still going to see little sections. It's not completely obscuring it, but it is in large part covering over it. Turn it up. Go over it a few times if necessary. I set it 80% because I'm happy for some gaps in the texture to remain. Rather than it being completely flat, a little bit of texture there is sometimes useful. Tap on the layer, put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go to the 2nd color on the middle row, and we're going to go to the burnt tree brush within charcoals. 20% size, 40% opacity, and I'm just going to bring in sweeps of this color through here, and we have a generally up and down movement there. Doesn't matter so much over this side, but we've just created a bit more of that kind of blue color in there a little bit, like that. When it comes over here, we're going to obscure it anyway, so don't worry too much here and here. I'm then going to go and create another layer, layer 10. We're going to go for the 1st color on the middle row. Still with a medium hard brush, 3% size, 100% opacity. And we're just going to build in another section here, but I'm going to have it quite steeply rising up, quite tall, into a spike, maybe another one, and then going off to the side. You can sculpt and arrange this however you want. I'm going to have it coming over at this side and then up. Bring it down so they kind of join and meet. And then you can just put it at a bigger size, fill it in. Don't really care about the bottom section. We're going to reflect some of these features and details anyway, so just fill it in. We could just drag it to that bottom section, I suppose, can't we? It's quicker. Tidy it up if need be. Turn it down 2%, and then you can just create the absolute kind of more of a finished edge so that you're happier with it. Like that. And then going to go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. Go to the eraser, put the eraser on the medium brush with an airbrushing. 3% size, about 20% strength. And just from the top, I'm going to reveal or push back certain sections, which in turn brings certain bits further forward. So I'm just going to knock back a section there, and that creates sort of like split levels. Leave the alpha lock on. I'm going to go for the third color on the middle row. I'm going to switch back to the Charcoal's Burnt Tree brush, 20% size, 40% strength. And then with this color, I'm just going to add some more texture, bring it across, sweep it, swing that across both ways, and we can allow it to flatten out at the bottom. Doesn't really matter, it's going to be covered over largely. I'm not really going over this section, or quite that section. Then I'm going to go to the smudge, put the smudge on the painting Nico roll brush, 10% size, 60% strength, and then we're just mushing that in a little bit. We definitely want some of that texture to kind of have its influence, but we're just allowing it to be a bit more painterly, more brushed in, so it's not quite so harsh as the charcoal texture. We're going for more of a painting look. It's quite useful to have the two textures playing together. And again, flatten it out at the bottom, like that. I'm going to go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 11, move along to the 6th color on the middle row, go back, airbrushing, go for the medium hard brush, 3% size, 100% opacity, and we're going to have a section here that's just further towards us, closer towards us. And it can go up. It can be quite steep up the side there, and create a little point at which it kind of joins with what will be the water, and then it can go off horizontally. So a little spike there as it joins with the water. Might cover some of that over with mist, but we'll get it in there to begin with. Bigger size, 9–10%, just fill it in. Back to the eraser. I might just go with the medium brush on the eraser. 2% size, 100% opacity. Maybe just reduce it a little bit, knock it back, make it a bit shorter. I think I'd like it to reach about the halfway, near to where the sun is, but not really any further. Back to the brush, and well, where were we? Maybe 3% size. We'll have a section that cuts in front here. Maybe comes down a little bit lower, almost to the halfway point, but not quite, and then back a little bit. Again, we can increase the size, maybe 5%. We can have it blending in up there. Move it across horizontally, fill it in, turn it back down 3%. Maybe that can come as a little spike there, and then it could be another little area. Juts out here, maybe there could be some stones, add some taps for it. Comes back in, and another one comes back in, and then maybe it just sweeps out, cuts the bottom of the canvas off, increase it back up, 9–10%, and just fill it in. And we just kind of create this shape. It's still very rough at this stage. That's absolutely fine. Let's turn that down, maybe 4%. And we're just creating this kind of movement of it coming in and then back out again. We will obviously refine that further. I'm going to tap on that layer and put on the alpha lock. And I'm going to go to a darker color. We're going to go for the 9th color on the middle row. Maybe switch to the soft brush with an airbrushing. 10% size, maybe 30% strength. And we're going to have a darker area down here. We've got a darker color yet as well, but we'll darken this up just to start showing tonal perspective. Turn it down 5%. And we can have maybe this one as it juts out be darker. than this one here. We'll make it even darker when it comes close to, but and then just some sort of blending in, go over it a few times, kind of blend that in a little bit. Create a sense of kind of layers. Create a new layer, layer 12, and we'll create another land feature here, 2% size. In fact, we need to switch, don't we, back to the medium high brush, 2% size, 100% opacity. And then maybe just on this in between there and there, I'll have a little feature that comes out here and then swings up. Maybe something like this. And then we'll bring it across and just sort of have it swinging out to the side there. Very sketched in, and that's fine. Doesn't need to be neat. We are going to refine this, so in these stages, doesn't really matter. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to just untick layers 12 and 11, and then I'm going to go to the wrench, copy canvas, and paste. And it's going to have copied everything, but not the layers that we've made invisible. And it's put it as a layer on top up here. I want to go to the selection, rectangle, drag, and we'll select everything up to maybe that bottom bit there. Go to the invert, go on the layer, tap on it and clear, and you won't see, but it's deleted that bottom section. Then we can go to the transform, flip it vertically, and bring it down. In fact, before we get to the bottom, we'll go to freeform, pinch it in a little bit, and that allows us to get more of the sun reflected in the water. Line it up, about there. So it's just very thin in the middle. Deselect. Then we'll go to the adjustments, motion blur, and we'll do it downwards to about 20%. So you drag it down until the slider gets to about 20% and deselect. Then we're going to drag it so it goes underneath. Bit tricky to do. Drag it so it goes underneath layers 11 and 12. We can put them back on, and then it puts everything in its kind of place. And then, well, once we've done that, we can kind of see bits that will work and bits that will, need a little bit of adjustment. So we can go back to layer 11, for example, with the eraser, to the medium brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 100% opacity, and I might just remove that for now. We'll add stones, but we don't want it directly on the reflection at this stage. Maybe reduce that a little bit. Then underneath layers 11 and 12, we've got the inserted image. I'm going to create a layer on top of that. I'm going to go to the soft brush with an airbrushing. I'm going to go for this blue color, the 5th color on the middle row, 2%. Actually, we'll go for 3% size, maybe 30% strength. We'll zoom in. And I want some of this cloud, or mist, we should say, coming into this section and just kind of hovering back here, creeping up there a little bit, obscuring much of what we've got there in the center. Maybe turn it down 2%, creeping up there in the distance as well, obscuring much of that. Coming down here, let's turn it up 4%, covering over and coming back here. Go to layer 11 and create a layer above that, but importantly underneath layer 12. And then we can carry on that kind of theme. Create another section that comes in here, wisps up this side like that. It's quite dark at the minute, so we'll stay on this layer first, tapping it, put the alpha lock on, and then we go to brighter color. So we'll go for the 3rd color on the top row, and then we can go over this, brighten it up, and add some of that luminosity. And then we'll go to the earlier mist, layer 14, and again, bring in some of that luminosity, some of that brightness. The sun is obviously shining on it. We don't want to lose that light. Put the alpha lock on. Don't want to go too far with that. And that started to create a sense of distance. We'll go in with the white, but we need to be very cautious with it. So turn it to 3% size and actually only about 5% strength. And we'll just bring a little bit of that whiteness underneath the sun for the most part, especially in this section. Underneath the sun, a bit more of that absolute brightness is quite useful. Let's go to layer 15, still got the alpha lock on. Let's bring some of that whiteness in here as well. Again, just translates, brings the light down into the scene. On this layer, I'm tapping, turn off the alpha lock, go to the smudge, put the smudge on the airbrushing soft brush, 3% size, 40% strength. And I can just use this to maybe just create a slightly nicer look for the clouds. Just sort of twisting and turning this just improves the look of it. Maybe turn it up more, higher on that 3%. Circling it in just makes a slightly better kind of mist. And we'll go back and we'll do this to layer 4. Tap on it, turn off the alpha lock. Again, just a few taps of this, twist it, circle it, whatever just helps improve the look of that. We can always go and refine that a little later on, but for now, it's enough to move forwards with. Now that's sort of in balance, I'm going to go back to layer 9, go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and back to a suitable colour, the first colour on the middle row. Bring some of that colour in. We definitely need it to be strong, about 20% strength, 3% size, and we're on the soft brush with an airbrushing. And we want there to be kind of just handing off points between that section and that section. So we can bring in some of that colour, bring bits of it over here, and that kind of works. But the top edge is a bit strong, so I'm going to go in with the eraser, but the eraser to the soft brush, 3% size, 30% strength, and just maybe just soften in that top edge. Allow it to disappear into the atmosphere a little bit. We'll go along to the next important layer, which is layer 10. And we'll probably do something similar, just erase it, soften it in. Not everywhere, but maybe just in the upper sections. Think about it, kind of softening in with the cloud there a little bit. Okay, let's go to layer 11. We have the alpha lock on, we'll leave that on. We'll go in with the soft brush, why not? And we'll go to some different colours. So we'll go for the 7th colour on the middle row. Top end of 2% size, 20% strength. I'm going to bring some of this tone. Remember, this is just these sections and this section on the right. Maybe slightly lower on that 2%. I'm just going to go over this bottom section. Bring in the lower areas, the sense that there's grass. Different colours. Rockier up in the upper areas, but in these lower areas, there's going to be settled, grassier areas. We can then try the 8th colour. Bring in some even lighter tones. Maybe turn it down, lower on that 2%, maybe about 40% strength. We can really just ramp it up in areas, make it really quite vibrant. And then not go too far up with it, so it's like a dappled, patchy look. The sun is just impacting. This is what's going to bring the whole effect together, really. Back again to the 7th colour. We can further extend some of that up a little bit further, but not too far. Come over to this side, and we're going to start adding it here as well, going up to the edge of the water. Maybe turn it down again, 25% and about just into the 3% size. And we can just create some textures. Move on these areas over here. And we're going to have it corresponding to the shapes I've already created. I'm going to go down on that 2%, focusing around here. I want it to be kind of a bit chaotic. Let's look at our colours. We'll go to the 10th colour. Kind of have a warmer hue to it as we get closer. Bring this in streaks. Allow it to kind of come in places, even in the distance as well. Not too much. We're going to use more of it in the foreground. I'm not going to do that too much yet. Let's go for the 8th colour again. 2% size. Bring some of that light. We've got it there. So there's every reason it should be in this area too. Somewhat. A few taps of it up here. We want it to kind of start dissipating out, and then I suppose back with the 7th colour, and it just sort of disappears up there. Just lightly graze it, blend it in a little bit, and it's starting to build things together, blend it together a little bit better. We could go back to layer 10, I suppose, with the 7th colour, 2% size, 25% strength, again just in these lower sections. Maybe turn it down even more, lower on that 2%. Just the lower areas here, bits of that warmth, but not too much. Some of it down there, that's quite nice. Okay, we're going to go back to layer 12. Let's deal with this section. Back in with the brush, the medium hard brush, and let's just really tidy up the edges. So let's go for the 9th colour again. 3% size, 100% opacity. And I wasn't entirely happy with the way that this is yet. We hadn't really refined or neatened it up, so let's do that now. Curving in over here. A little bit of that kind of undulating in and out, but not as much, just subtly. Maybe a little peak here, and then it comes down again, up here, whatever seems to work well for you. And then we can tap on the layer, put on the alpha lock, 10th color on the middle row, go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, maybe 15% strength. Just let's go a bit more careful with it. We can just blend. It's quite a muted version then. Maybe it's in the shadow a little bit more. Comes down, joins in here. We've got the alpha lock on, so we can't accidentally put it where it isn't appropriate. Turn it down, lower on that 2%, and you can just have a slightly bit more texture the way it blends in. Over here, let's go for a lighter version. You can probably have a go at using these colors, so maybe the 8th color on the bottom row. Just a little bit of that, it's lighter. It's closer to, so that the hue is okay to be a little bit warmer. Let's turn that down even more. Really low on the 2% size. And just catching the light a little bit. Broken textures. Really feels like it's just sort of feeding through into this area, just subtly. Then on the water's edge, perhaps we'll do some cooler colors. So maybe the 4th color on the middle row, 2% size, 20% strength or so. Not quite there, really. There we go. Add some of this cooler color. Just bits of it up here as well. Not too much, just it's not completely flat. I'm going to take that section, slide and duplicate it. Bottom version, transform. Flip it horizontally, move it down, line it up, and then going to turn off the alpha lock of the one underneath. Adjustments, motion blur to the side, oops, about 30%, deselect, put the alpha lock back on. I'm going to go in with the brush, soft brush. I'm going to make this slightly darker, in fact, on the reflection, so I'm going to go in maybe with a 3rd color on the bottom row, 5% size, 20% strength or so. I just want to darken up this reflection. It shouldn't be really looking as bright as the bit above it. Now I've added that in, I feel like the mountains that are up here don't seem to be reflected quite as I would want. So on layer 12, I'll turn off the alpha lock again, and I can just kind of suggest and hint at those by going in with maybe the 3rd color on the middle row, medium brush with an airbrushing, 3% size and maybe 20% strength, and just subtly maybe imagine that they are kind of reflected. You only have to do a little bit to hint at it, and it just makes it feel a bit more dramatic. That is reflected somehow in the water down here. I think it feels better for it. Now I'm going to go to layer 11, create a layer above it, layer 17. I'm going to tap on it and put on a clipping mask which links it to layer 11. And on this new layer, separate layer, I'm going to go in with the 1st color on the bottom row, and I'm going to go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing. 10% size, maybe 20% strength. Come down here, add a bit more darkness as it comes and swings really close to us. Builds in that perspective better, like that. Just a few sweeps of it. I'm going to go to the top, create a new layer on top, layer 18. Still with the 1st color on the bottom row, I'm going to switch to the medium brush with an airbrushing. 3% size, maybe 80% strength, 100% strength, and I'm going to create some rocks in the foreground, jutting in here. We've got the kind of the surface color, but now I definitely need some individual rocks littered in all around this area. Just keep some random shapes initially, doesn't really need to be particularly labored over. Turn the size down 2%, and the opacity down to maybe 40%. And we can just continue some of these points of rocks over here as well. Not so much back there, just in this area and closer. Bring some of that texture in, little taps. So bring it through. Meld those areas together quite nicely. Okay, then we can go to some lighter colors, bring out some of the light in those rocks. So let's go for the 2nd color on the bottom row, 3% size, 40% strength. And we can just build in maybe on the back side, the rear side of some of these stones, some of this blue color, pepper it through. Again, doesn't really need to be overly labored on. That's all. Then we can go, we'll skip a few colors for now. We'll go for the 5th color on the bottom row, still with a medium brush, low on that 2% size, and we're going to turn it quite low as well to 20% strength. And then, well, we're going to start picking some flat surfaces of our stones that are just reflecting back the light from the sun. And it's not necessarily going to be every stone. Some stones will be slightly more in shadow, and some will have a surface that is going to reflect the light a little bit more. Depends on the shape of the stone perhaps, and how it's positioned with other stones. Might be a smaller one that's hidden behind some bigger ones, but either way, you can see an edge. And then if we go alternate between that and maybe a really light colour, the 7th colour, turn that down to 1% and 30% strength. And then once you've got that, you can add some highlights in and amongst that initial colour. You can trace some really crisp edges in places around the edge of a stone. And then the effect is going to bring that light further towards us. To alternate between these colours, I'm going to go back to the 5th colour, turn it up a little bit more, 2%. Well, let's stay at the 30% strength, I suppose. I can always press more lightly. With the airbrushing, it is pressure sensitive, so the lighter you press, the less opacity. Stays the same size. It's not pressure sensitive in terms of size, but opacity is. Now, you don't want to fill absolutely every area in. We're just going for the top surfaces of a select few stones to begin with, in places. And then importantly, we might go to these colours. So let's go for the 9th colour. And let's go back to maybe, well, let's try a different brush. Let's go to the organic rainforest brush. I'm going to reset it. I had changed it, but I'm going to go with the reset version. If you haven't changed it, you won't need to do that. Low on the 2% size and maybe about 30% strength. And then just kind of in between some of these stones, perhaps there's just bits of grass. It's quite muted, but it's catching the light and it has a warmth to it. And it's probably the warmest colour we have in terms of the grass. We have it back here, so it definitely needs to link the areas together and feature here too. Otherwise it's not going to work. It's not going to be cohesive and pull together as an image. So let's really bring some of that grass in the close to areas. Try not to overdo the stones that you've already done. Go for an area perhaps where you haven't really added much. Concentrate there on the in-betweens. Let's turn it up, top end of 2%. And then we can go for a lighter colour, the 8th colour, turn it down on that 2% again. Again, just some alternation between those slightly different hues is quite useful. What we could do is create a new layer, put the blend mode down to add, and then I'm going to try the orange colour, the 4th colour. Stay with the rainforest brush, 2% size, but put it super low, maybe about 5%. And let's just have some of that come through, bring a little bit of warmth into areas. We've got warmth in the sun, so why can't it feed through to the grass? We have a real kind of luminosity coming through. Not everywhere, we want to just ramp it up in places. Be a little bit selective with it, brings a bit even more warmth, light and sun. And I think it's an important part of the overall effect as well. You can keep adding this as much as you think the image can take it, is relevant, increases the look of the piece. Turn it down even lower on the 2%. Maybe that's too much there. I'm going to go back to the inserted image down here underneath layer 14 and above layer 10. I'm going to go in with the smudge, put the smudge on the hard brush with an airbrushing, 3% size, 100% opacity. I'm just going to push the sun up and down a little bit just to get rid of that circle. And then I'm going to do more of a sideways movement for the water, introduce kind of a ripple effect. It doesn't take a lot to really suggest that. I can then go to other features like we have layer 12, tap on that. Again, we can just maybe even reduce the size down a little bit, 2%. Just push that around, introduce more of those kind of rippled effects. Looking back through some of the layers, we have hard edges, perhaps where I don't want hard edges. So let's go back to layer 12, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. And the smudge is really useful. So I'm going to go in with the soft brush within airbrushing on the smudge. 2% size, 40% strength or so. And then we can just give a slightly dreamier, less focused edge. And it really just helps with some images just to be a little less sharp in places. It works better. Let's go to layer 11, tap on it, turn off the alpha lock. And there's definitely some places where I'd rather have it kind of softened in along certain edges. and underneath it as well, where it blends with the water. It's going to work better. Over here, for example, soften that in, especially on the bottom edge. Over here, it can just kind of mush together. Doesn't need to be absolutely vividly clear in all places. Over here, where were we? Layer 10. Mush some of this together a little bit. Tap on it, turn off the alpha lock again. Yeah, just soften some of these edges. Back on layer 18, again with a smudge, same settings. It's just not happy with that entirely, so we can just mush it in to begin with. Wherever you're not quite happy with it, we can always go back in and refine it further. So let's do that. Back in with the brush, put the brush to the medium brush, first color on the bottom row. In fact, for this area, maybe go for the second color on the bottom row. 2% size, 60% strength or so. And we can just have some more irregular shapes and stones coming in here. We can just tap and refine this as much as we want to. Same here, just a few touches. Even back here, if we're going back there, maybe go to the fourth colour. Just tap it in a little bit. Back to the second colour. Just a few extra stones and irregular shapes in there in the mix. Back to the first colour. And well, I suppose in this area over here, we can have more stones that kind of go into the water. Don't need to do too many. Few in there, and they should really have a reflection. I'm going to go to the third colour on the middle row, just underneath. Doesn't take a lot, just a hint of reflections. Go into the soft brush. Speaking of reflections, I'm going to go to 2% size, still the 5% opacity, and I feel like I can kind of bring more of a sense of the reflection to areas maybe up to 10%. I feel like there should be more of a presence of reflection in places. And I also am going to darken up the whole of that inserted image in places, add more blue. So let's go down to the inserted image. We'll go with this 10th colour on the last row, bottom row, soft brush, 6% size, 20% strength. In fact, no less. We'll go for the 10% strength. We'll build in some of this blue down here. It's just going to push a little bit of that light focused in the center more, which I think is going to help just balance the image a little bit more. We'll take it up there as well. Just shut down bits of this. I feel like it kind of brings the light into the scene a bit better. Maybe go for the 5th color. As it comes towards the center, we can just add some of this light blue a little bit more, soften it in. Back up to the top, finishing touches, layer 19. Back in with the orange and back in with the organic rainforest brush. Lower the 2% size, put it up a little bit, 10% opacity. Again, just slightly ramp it up. I don't want to overdo it. I think sometimes subtlety is better. Just a few touches of it here and there. And I'm going to create one more layer, tap on the N, put it on the add blend mode. Stay with the orange color, but we're going to go to the airbrushing soft brush. I'm going to put it pretty big at 20% size, but really low. I'm going to put it at 2% opacity. And I'm just going to channel this between there and there, just a couple of times like that. And it just brings more of that light in. Maybe just a little bit down here as well. And don't do too much. You can see the impact. It's brought a lot of that light into the scene and creates the reason why we've got such bright colors around. I might also just go in with the soft brush down to 2% size, 6-7% opacity, whatever, and just go in, make a little bit more of some of the cloud features to get close to the sun. I feel like the sun is a little bit strong, so I'm going to go to layer 4, adjustments, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to blur that in to about the 20%, and I actually prefer just the slightly less crispy look of the sun when I do that. Okay, I'm going to leave this tutorial here at this point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. If you're watching the tutorial on the day of its upload, then you might still have a little bit of time to go and get registered on my 2 courses. There is a link in the description. You can go and find out more information about them there. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon. Bye for now.